Hi everyone, welcome to History San Diego. I'm George Farrar. Today, October 19th, 2024, I had an excellent time visiting the replica of the first county courthouse here at Old Town San Diego State Historic Park. A beautiful day and a lot of opportunity for me to learn, to get out into Old Town and really start gathering even more photos and details about San Diego's amazing history. And so I look forward to bringing to you ahead in this show, San Diego Incorporated, looking at the interesting times that were happening in the early 1850s, specifically the period of time of around about 2 years, 1850 to 1852. So I look forward to bringing to you some interesting details. We're going to actually go into the early ordinances, the early laws, the early actions of the city government that was elected in June of 1850. And prior, back in April of 1850, 157 votes were cast to set up the county government and to elect the first county officials of San Diego County. So a lot happening in a very short period of time. Now, in my prior show, I've referenced some interesting shenanigans that were going to be happening, and I'll be bringing you some details about that as we go through those first movements of power. People in these early days vested so much power in these city and county officials, and it was time for these people to start levying taxes and start imprisoning people in jail and to start selling off the Pueblo lands. So much is going to be happening, and there are a lot of stories, there's a lot of legends. It's incredibly intriguing. In fact, when you really start digging, you'll never find your way out from all of the stories and legends and details for hours. I encourage all of you who watch History San Diego or have stumbled upon this show today to really go out and come out to Old Town, and also to go out onto the digital landscape of the internet, and you'll find some amazing things there. And I can tell you that through my research. And so, without further ado, it's time to bring you San Diego Incorporated. As we approach the replica of the first City Hall and courthouse, I'd like to go ahead and read to you a passage from a pamphlet I received while touring. This passage is written by First San Diego Courthouse Incorporated. The original brick courthouse was built in 1847 by members of the Mormon Battalion Company B, U.S. Army. It was built with private funds and was the first fired brick structure erected in California. The 16 by 26-foot building stood at the corner of Mason Street and San Diego Avenue on the plaza. On March 27, 1850, a legislative act incorporated San Diego as the first city in California. It also marked the beginning of the courthouse's use as San Diego's first civic building. A fire started in the courthouse on March 27, 1872, swept westward, destroying a major section of the business district facing the plaza. I really enjoyed touring the museum inside the replica of the first City Hall and courthouse. We actually enter a courtroom that would have at the time been presided over by Judge Witherby. And we go further into the back of this relatively small building to see the offices of the mayor and of the sheriff. Again, keeping in mind that this is a replica building, and we see some facts about what was going on back then, and we see some artifacts from the time. And we can look at the courtroom where justice was delivered swiftly, if you could get it. Judge Oliver Witherby was a judge who presided at that time in San Diego. Office of the mayor, that would have been representing where Joshua Bean would have been, and the newly elected sheriff. And there's some different fun facts and background that we see in the museum. Now we'll go just out back to take a look at an iron jail cell, typical of the time. And interestingly, a time capsule is buried underneath this iron jail cell to be opened in 2049. So it is amazing when you look at simply the fact that this is a replica of a beginning of justice in San Diego County as San Diego entered the United States system of governance. We're looking at a photograph from 1869, and if you take a look where you see the number 2, directly below that and to the left is the original City Hall and County Courthouse before it burned down. And so we also have an opportunity to see La Casa de Estudio, and we see the plaza and the flagpole. So we have a snapshot, at least, even though it's further out in the 1860s, almost towards 1870. We have an opportunity to put in perspective what was going on, what things looked like back then. So now I'm pleased to go ahead and to begin to talk with you about what actually was going on in San Diego in the early 1850s. And to do that, we need to go back and not only just look at illustrations, but to look at maps, because maps are incredibly important. Maps, in many ways, tell a story. And this map particularly tells a story. We see where we have Old Fort Stockton, we have San Diego. Then we have further down, we have New San Diego, already a concept that was really starting to get to going. And a lot of this was going to be helped by Lieutenant Cave Couts. And he was in the Army. He was a lieutenant in the Army. And he was a map maker. He would sketch out maps. And he was a unique personality. And so he ended up going out to the American Southwest. He drew this map in December of 1848. So by the late 1840s, he's in the area, and he's going to have an opportunity to work on the Boundary Commission that will be setting the official boundary lines between the United States and Mexico. So that is some of the business that will bring him out to California. And he's a unique personality, as we can see from this brief history. And he's one of those personalities that you see him practically everywhere in the 1850s and 1860s in California, particularly in San Diego. He was a good friend of the mayor, Joshua Bean, and would benefit from various schemes and things that went on. And he was smart enough to marry one of Juan Bandini's daughters. So he married into the San Diego power structure. Here's another map that was drawn by Lieutenant Couts in 1849. And so there was a lot more of an emphasis of really trying to get a town going. And the way to do that is through mapping and through subdividing and through the sale of land. But first, he had to have a grasp of the area. And so he actually went around and did mapping not only of San Diego proper, which would have been Old Town and then emanating out from Old Town, a lot like the other map makers we've discussed earlier in the series did, but he went further up. He went further up north of San Diego, and so he was careful to draw the rios, the rivers, and it looks like here the ranchos, the various different ranchos. This has to have been then in the area of San Juan Capistrano and Laguna and San Luis Rey and Temecula. And he looks like he denotes an Indian village. Now, when we refer to Indian, back then that was referring to the Native Americans of the area. He will be a prominent force in local politics. And Interestingly, he will get caught up in a scheme in the early days of the city government that will not be a good starting point for the city. Uh, he, as I mentioned, was good friends with the first mayor, Joshua Bean, who happened to be the outgoing alcalde, the last alcalde, because they had a political force uh, even before the city was incorporated. And so it says here San Diego's first mayor, Joshua Bean, reportedly sold City Hall and the land it set on to himself and a drinking buddy, that's Cave Couts, for $2.50, that's in 1850s money. He eventually deeded the property back to the city after a lawsuit and later resigned as mayor over a pay dispute. He was mayor from 1850 to 1851. To best illustrate the immense powers held at that time, let's take a look at an early deed. Everything was handwritten back then. This is a deed from January of 1850. Note where it says Lot 1, Block 18, as designated upon the plot of beach lots of said town and drawn by Lieutenant Cave J. Couts of U.S. Army and filed in the office of said alcalde. So this is a conveyance of land. So even before the city election, there's a lot that was going on relating to the dispensation, the sale of land. This appears to be a copy from the San Diego Abstract Company. And we see this that was filed in February. A lot was going on in the early months of 1850. Developers from all over were deciding that they want to actually build further away from what we know as Old Town and to really start building in the area of what would become New Town, what would become the San Diego we would come to know as a more active commercial district. But that's going to take years and years and years of struggle. Ultimately, Cave Couts will die in 1874, and he'll be survived by Isidora Bandini de Couts, who will later on die in 1897. So he had the opportunity to do a lot in San Diego. We haven't heard the last of him. He will go on to do more things, and we will hear from him again in various stories throughout the series, throughout the History of San Diego series. And so he had quite a life, and he died at Horton House ultimately. So, though the story isn't so great for Joshua Bean, by January of 1851, he's no longer mayor. He wanted more money to be mayor, and things were not going well, certainly based on some of the shenanigans that were happening. He was shot at and died in November 1852 after having moved away from San Diego. And so we see a newspaper account of that. It is worthy to note that Joshua Bean was actually the brother of the infamous Roy Bean. Roy Bean called himself the only law west of the Pecos. So it's important to keep in mind that none of this is going unnoticed in the local area, all these different shenanigans and things going on. And it certainly is not going unnoticed. And all of this is happening before statehood is officially granted. The United States will not formally admit California as a state until September of 1850. Later on in our series, I'll talk with you about the implications and all the background related to admitting California into the Union. So we have, though, something to keep in mind. And a question I would ask you, what really is the state government for? People create local governments. In this situation, San Diego formed up as it had formed up previously as a pueblo, forms up as an incorporated city, having been granted incorporation in March of 1850. So really, when you think about it, all of these powers, they are formally vested in these local governments. But ultimately, something had to be done. And so we look right now at what was the first legislature of California in 1849, because a lot of the machinations to get local governance going happened once the Constitution was approved by the people. And we see the first senators and assembly people in the first legislature. So as we go through, we take a look, we see all the different places these people were from. And for example, the first senator, E. Kirby Chamberlain, was from Connecticut. Oliver Witherby was from Ohio. And we have a photo of Witherby. And we have here more accounts of different land dealings. And we see where the salaries for the various city officials were designated by the mayor and the common council. $1,000 for the mayor. That turned out to be not enough for what Joshua Bean wanted. And ultimately, he left and would be replaced with another mayor. And so all of these things that were going on, ultimately the city became bankrupt. There was a problem with the original jail. There, of course, was the issue with the mayor's salary and the inappropriate attempt to sell, to take the land underneath the city hall. And so ultimately, the third session of the California legislature comes about, and they pass an act and they repeal the original Incorporation Act of March 27th, 1850. And so they go through and they set us up a board of trustees. And they specify how these trustees are going to be elected and to take office, what the whole structure is going to consist of. And this will be what will take San Diego through into the 1870s, 1880s. By around 1887, 1888, 1889, there'll be a new structure. But at this point also, too, they designate the Board of Supervisors for San Diego County. And they start to invest in the county, to vest in the county, powers of taxation. And that will add some complexities and certainly some issues later on, as we'll see in our History San Diego series. So we take another look here at this photograph from 1869, and we look at what was going on in the 1850s. And we know that we're going to see a lot of growth, and a lot of the focus is going to be how the people of San Diego County and of San Diego deal with the issues of taxation, of law and order, of trade. And so I've really enjoyed bringing San Diego Incorporated to you. I have a lot more to bring you throughout the series. And so I want to invite you to please, if you haven't already done so, subscribe to this channel. Let me know in the comment section what you think. We have a Facebook group, History San Diego. Please check it out. And here is our upcoming schedule. As you can see, I have a lot planned ahead in our 2024-2025 History San Diego season number 4. I want to invite you to stay tuned. The best is yet to come. And of course, thanks for watching. Take it easy. See you later.